Good morning. This is going to be video number 3, and I'm actually going to chop this one up into a few different segments just for the sake of time. So what I've already done so far is I've measured off my cable where it needs to be to the end so that we get the proper length that we're looking for. And then I've fed it in so that way I can get a proper cut distance for my wire. And I'm going to need a strip distance right here. So this, I'm not actually cutting the wire to here, I'm just pre-stripping. And these tools are also very cheap. You can find them on Amazon in electronics kits. So I went ahead and scored that off. And then I'm going to figure out how much extra wire I'm going to need to get over to here. And that should be plenty. So then I'm going to go ahead and cut these once I find my cutters. So I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to go ahead and strip this back off camera, and then we'll come back in just a moment. Alright, so this is going to be the part that is not for the faint of heart. If you do not feel comfortable working at the component level, then I wouldn't recommend doing it this way. I would recommend doing it with the wire splice. However, this is the way that I do it, and I just thought you might be interested in seeing it. So for this, since we're working with old solder on these components, I'm going to use a little bit of liquid flux. This is No Clean Chip Quick. It could be purchased online, Amazon, many different places. I'm going to apply a little bit to each point that I need to remove. And then I'm going to take my soldering iron. I'm going to flow the solder on that connection point. To be able to remove the wire. And this is where the flux comes in handy, because it will allow the solder to actually flow. And they actually put this wire in there pretty good. There it goes. Alright, so we'll remove both of those wires. We'll remove this wire. Now I recommend using some sort of gloves or otherwise a pair of tweezers for removing those, because the wires do get quite hot. I've just obviously been doing this for a very long time, so it doesn't bother me anymore. And we're going to use solder wick, also easily bought on Amazon. Sometimes you can get the whole kit with the flux pen, the solder wick, everything together. And we're going to use this with a little bit more flux to clean these connection points so that they'll be ready to accept the new solder and the new wires, and it'll also open up the holes so we can feed the wire through the holes. Pro tip, put a little bit of your flux on your solder wick as well, and that'll help it flow into that wick. And clean those up. yes, this stuff does smell pretty bad. Now, once you get solder into your solder wick, and it turns silver, you want to go ahead and move to another section, cut off the silver end, start with a fresh piece. Otherwise, you risk getting it stuck to the part, and then you're in for a fight to get it loose. And this one is not cleaning up very good. Have a lot of solder on there, so I'm going to add just a touch more. Flux. Flux is your best friend when it comes to soldering. Man, did that one have a lot of solder still left on it. So let's go ahead and clean up our wick again. All right. And I'll try to show this on camera. So now we have all three of the holes opened up on the component side. So that way we can run our wire through there. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, and again off camera, I'm going to go ahead and get these wires prepped out, cut back to the proper length and stripped. And then I will show you how we go about soldering them back on once I've looped them through these holes. I also do want to add that this is the proper strip length. So when you strip your wires back, you don't want to overstrip them because that can lead to shorting problems. So less is better, as long as you have enough to make a good connection onto each point that you're connecting to. Also, for wires that you are using that are existing and you do not want to cut any shorter, to clean them up is somewhat similar to the solder wick. You can take and add a little bit of flux. Remember, flux is your best friend when soldering. And you can just take and reflow that solder on the wire to smooth it out, so that way that wire is ready and tinned and ready to go back into the connector. Alright, so now we have all of our wires connected where they belong. And we basically just made a little loop in the wire, run it through the hole, and then use a small pair of pliers or tweezers to tighten them down. To make sure that they're secure to the post. And you also need to verify and check in between each one that there are no little strands of wire touching anything that they should not be touching. And once you've verified that, this is the simplest part, and also the most dangerous, because you have to make sure that you do not melt anything. We're going to go ahead and take and make sure our solder tip is clean and flow in the brand new solder. To connect these points together. And join the wire to the component. And then you'll want to visually look at it and verify that nothing is shorted together. Make sure you have enough solder. This red one seems like it might be a little bit light, so I'm going to go ahead and add just a touch more to the red wire to make sure we have a good solid connection. And that is it. So now we can go ahead and go about routing this cable the way it was originally routed. And because this is a tight squeeze in here, I'm going to use my pliers and just kind of pinch the insulation just a little bit so that it fits down into that groove where it came out of. Take the old wire away. And now this is a very important part with the routing, that you want it to go in and be secured in multiple points. And this is why they do it this way from the factory, because these things are going to get pulled on, they're going to get tugged on. And I've used a piece of tape just to mark so that I have the exact length on the outer end of the cable that we want. And then this is another securing point here. We're going to take this and try to do this where the camera can see. I'm going to get that little safety bit there onto that. And then we're going to go ahead and tighten this down onto the wire. So now this wire is secure. It's not going to move. Bend it, make sure it goes into its groove. And then we can assemble this back together, and you have the perfect length cable that was requested, and this unit is done. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you very much.